You know, empty flat roofs are literally everywhere, but what if we could easily transform them into productive, lush green spaces? Today, we're diving into Pierre Duranlot's comprehensive explainer on building simple, edible roof gardens, giving you exactly what you need to know before you kick off a project of your own. Now, this grand dream of rooftop agriculture, it's definitely not a new one. I mean, think back to the legendary hanging gardens of Babylon. For millennia, humanity has had this deep-seated urge to elevate our gardens toward the sky, bringing living, breathing ecosystems right into our built environments. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to cover the rooftop garden revolution, check out the different types of green roofs, dive into planning and safety, look at the traditional layer system, and finally get into simple edible roof designs, wrapping up with the real-world pros and cons using Duranlot's guide. All right, part one, the rooftop garden revolution. Duranlot really hammers home that adding green space up top has some absolutely profound impacts. Economically, you're actually saving money through better insulation, plus boosting your property value. On the ecological side, all that vegetation acts like a giant sponge, absorbing heat and dust. It totally helps mitigate that stifling urban heat island effect, and it retains stormwater, which is huge. And socially, you're creating this amazing therapeutic space that brings people together and actually lets you grow local food. To picture this on a massive scale, just think of places like the Montreal Hilton Hotel. It's a perfect example of a large-scale architectural green roof. It proves that commercial spaces and luxury hotels can be stunningly eco-friendly. But we're really just using that as inspiration to set the stage for the practical DIY stuff we're focusing on today. Moving right along to Section 2, Types of Green Roofs. Okay, so understanding the difference between extensive and intensive roofs is absolutely crucial before you start. Extensive roofs are your lightweight, cost-effective option. They need very little maintenance, but they're mostly inaccessible. Basically, it's function over form. Intensive roofs, though, that's where you get diverse, lush vegetation and high accessibility for hanging out or gardening. But the catch is, they put a massively heavy load on the building and require some seriously complex drainage systems. The difference between these two approaches is stark. On one hand, you've got the low-profile, extensive roof. Beautiful, sure, but definitely not meant for walking on. And then you have the intensive setup, which is basically a full-blown park in the sky, complete with heavy pathways, benches, and larger shrubs. Which brings us to Section 3, Planning and Safety Constraints. Look, we've got to treat safety with total respect here. Duranlot makes it crystal clear. A safe, effective roof access system is absolutely non-negotiable. Whether you're climbing through a ceiling trapdoor, scaling a fixed exterior ladder, or using a dedicated staircase, it has to be secure. If you can't safely haul yourself and your heavy materials up there, the project stops right there. No exceptions. And once you're actually up there, compliant perimeter guardrails are a must so you don't, fall off. Beyond that, you absolutely have to calculate the roof's load-bearing capacity. This means knowing your dead loads. Those are the permanent fixed structural elements of the building. And your live loads. Live loads are the tricky ones because they shift. Think heavy, saturated soil after a storm, pooling rainwater, and the growing plants themselves. If you don't factor in your building's exact architecture, you're literally risking a structural disaster. All right, Section 4, the traditional layer system. When you think about standard green roof infrastructure, the sheer complexity is kind of mind-blowing. This rigorous engineering is required to keep a building completely waterproofed while simultaneously supporting a wet, living, breathing ecosystem directly on top of it. Just wrap your head around this mandatory sequence. You need structural support for a vapor barrier, then thermal insulation, a heavy-duty waterproofing membrane, a drainage layer, a filter membrane, the actual growing medium, and finally, the plants. It's a massive undertaking. It's highly technical, incredibly heavy, and very, very expensive to install correctly. So let's pivot to Section 5, Simple Edible Roof Designs. This is where Duranlot's practical magic comes in. Instead of retrofitting the entire roof surface into that complex layered system we just talked about, just keep it simple. By using terracotta pots, ceramic vases, classic natural wood planters, or even fabric grow bags, you completely bypass the need for those massive, heavy substrate layers. It's a total game changer. It minimizes the structural load on your roof and slashes your costs down to earth. But of course, plants need water, right? And if dragging a garden hose all the way up to your roof just isn't happening, you're going to need a smart workaround. Using something like an inverted water catchment lid on a simple rain barrel is a brilliant, super low-cost solution. It lets you harvest the rainwater exactly where you need it, naturally. Now here's a totally vital DIY tip from Duranlu that you cannot skip. Whenever you use natural wood planter beds, always line the inside with a geotextile landscape fabric, basically a filter membrane. This acts as a barrier so the fine soil particles don't escape out the bottom every time you water. Because if they do, that soil will spread across your roof and eventually clog up the building's drainage plumbing stack. Trust me, you do not want to deal with that. Let's wrap things up with Section 6, Pros, Cons, and Reality. The advantages of this container method are just massive. You're looking at a drastically lower project cost and a way faster installation time. Plus, since these are temporary, movable structures, the risk of a plant's taproot damaging your roof membrane is pretty much zero. And hey, if the roof ever needs maintenance or repairs, you literally just slide the pots out of the way. Super easy. But let's be totally realistic about the downsides too. Unlike a traditional intensive green roof, having scattered containers isn't going to magically lower your building's heating or cooling bills. You miss out on that whole insulation factor. It's also really tough to overwinter perennial plants in above-ground pots up there. So this method is genuinely best suited for your annual vegetables. And just like any garden, it's going to demand your consistent time and maintenance. But wow, just think about the payoff. A thriving, totally realistic, urban apartment rooftop vegetable garden. If you keep the design simple, focus on those annuals, use raised wood beds, and really respect the safety and load limits, transforming a barren, boring flat roof into a lush source of fresh food is 100% achievable. So, I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on. Look up. Is there an empty garage, a shed, or maybe an apartment rooftop right above you that is just waiting to become an urban oasis? With a little bit of planning and some simple containers, you might literally be just a few steps away from harvesting your own food up in the sky. Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and happy gardening.